talking about accuracy, some of the big issues also with accuracy is choosing the correct disc to throw in the conditions that you're playing in. I was playing yesterday with a tourist that has come to Maui, and we were playing a hole on the back. It was a hole 11, so it plays as a dogleg right. So you got to throw it out straight and get it to turn back to the right and then glide at the basket. So it's like a 90-degree turn. The wind is blowing right to left. So your tee off is this direction and you're turning the disc this way, and the wind is coming from right to left. And he takes out a disc that was kind of understable because he decided to throw an anhyzer. So he's trying to throw the disc up on an angle like this and then have it go out, turn the corner, and then fly to the basket. But he wasn't paying attention to the wind. So you got a 20-mile-an-hour wind, you can't throw a big ante because the disc on an anhyzer is thrown like that. So the plate is completely exposed to that crosswind. And so all I did was hold his disc on a straight line, and he went right out the fairway. He never turned. Just went straight ahead off the fairway. The disc didn't have the ability to make the turn in that heavy wind. So paying attention to your wind conditions is real important. He probably could have thrown that same throw if he maybe threw, more overstable disc, something that could cut through the wind better. So it's real important when you're talking about accuracy to pay attention to what your elements are. Here in Maui, I don't know if you noticed, but every day it's winds blowing. If I hold up this is kind of like normal winds here. You can see how just the hand towels is blowing in the wind. But we probably average 20-mile-an-hour winds all the time. These are our standard winds. It's always blowing. It's just the trade winds. So a lot of people come here to visit as tourists, and then they play the course, and I guess where they live they don't have any wind. So they're not used to playing on a course where there's a lot of wind. So the discs that they bring are not suited for this element, with all the wind. So number one, when you're playing, really pay attention to the wind and, make your disc selection on the wind. I've watched people try to make shots. They're throwing a hyzer where you're throwing the disc out like this, where the disc will come up and spike in, and it's the same thing. It's a right to left wind, and they throw the disc out and it just blows their disc. They just not paying attention to the wind, and then they're surprised that their disc is flying to the left and didn't hold the line. It's pretty common. I see it a lot, especially with tailwind shots. People will throw a tailwind shot and they'll make it to the basket, but they're not realizing you got a 20-mile-an-hour tailwind. So the wind is blowing this way and you're throwing that way. And for us, when the wind shuts down here, like maybe, every now and then the wind will stop, and we call those Kona winds. So when the Kona winds come in, that's from the south. Right now all of our winds comes from the north. So when the wind's coming from the south, you'll watch them and they'll throw that same throw. They'll use the same disc, and they don't make it to the basket, and they don't know why. They don't understand how come their disc didn't go as far. They don't even pay attention that the wind shifted, and we don't have, they're not throwing with this 20-mile-an-hour tailwind. They're throwing no wind. So they're not making the adjustments on their disc selection to make that throw anymore. So you really need to pay attention to what the wind's doing when you're playing for accuracy. You know, if you're throwing a disc that's flippy, you know, if it normally flies, you know, really straight for you, and then when the wind's blowing, you throw that disc into the wind and it flips on you and goes to the right, you know, the disc is understable and it can't handle that wind. So you need to get a disc that can handle throwing into, you know, 15, 20 mile an hour winds. For out here, all my mid-ranges that I throw on this course are the most overstable mid-ranges Innova sells. You know, I throw the Gator, I throw the Cayman, and I throw the Pig. Those are my three main throwers on this course. From there, I'll play, you know, an Excalibur and a Destroyer. So yeah, or, you know, I'll throw in some Firebird shots, but very seldom do I ever get to throw an understable disc on this course. If I go to our upcountry course, it plays at 6,000 foot level, so I actually have discs that I'll use up there that I don't use down here. You know, because up there it's at 6,000 foot and there's no wind. Then you come down here, we're at sea level, and we got a 20 mile an hour wind. So it's really important to just pay attention to the wind when you're throwing. You need to understand your discs a lot if you're playing in wind. You know, there's different shots you can do to try to, you know, eliminate the effects of the wind. You can come in with an overstable disc, like this yellow one is a Gator. In this 20 mile an hour wind, 25 mile an hour wind, I could throw this disc straight ahead and it's gonna turn left every time. It's gonna go straight and turn left every single time. So if I want, I could try to flip this disc up, force it up on edge, so it's riding high on this outside edge as it comes out of my hand. It's called a force over, and get the disc to get a little more distance. Then the disc, since it wants to go left, will fight its way out of that throw to a flat, and then it'll end left. So that's how I can gain more distance throwing into a headwind, is by throwing a more overstable disc that the wind can't manipulate. So now it gives me the ability to manipulate the disc to get more distance. There's some discs, you know, you'd have to throw, like this one here is my rock. So the rock in this heavy wind is understable. If I throw this disc into the headwind, since it's a DX plastic, it's really beat in, but if I throw it into this headwind, it's going to turn to the right. If I throw this disc into the headwind, it's turning right. It's gonna flip. But if I want to try to control that flip and control how much it goes to the right, I can throw this into the wind on a hyzer. So I want to come from down here, and since this disc is flippy, it's going to roll over. So it'll come out on a hyzer, and because of the headwinds, it makes it understable, or more understable. So it'll actually roll from here, it'll roll flat, and then it'll turn to the right and then land. So that's the other way of throwing the disc, is throwing an understable disc that will turn in the wind. Try to get it to play on a hyzer. See, a hyzer throw would normally turn left. So you throw a hyzer and you go left. Here, since the disc wants to flip, you throw a hyzer and it'll roll back to flat and then turn to the right. And you can kind of control the turn of it, so it doesn't just 90 degree and go to the right on you. It'll actually come up, flip up, and then turn just slightly to the right and hold the line. So playing, you know, with the different discs and throwing the different angles is real important, because every disc does the same thing. On mid-ranges, you can buy discs that are really overstable. You can buy discs that like to fly straight, and you can buy a disc that likes to turn to the right. And then as you go into fairway drivers, it's the exact same thing. You got discs that turn left, right, and center, and the drivers, same thing, left, straight, and to the right. So you have that ability to kind of choose, you know, what disc you're going to throw. So for me, because where I live, I can't throw anything understable down on this course in Kahului. So I have to learn to throw overstable discs, and then I can maneuver them by throwing flex shots, but you know, and forcing it over. So those are just fun shots that you can learn while you're practicing, and it'll help you develop your throwing. You know, it's great to start, like I say, start with the mid-ranges, then work up. Go mid-ranges, fairway, and then drivers. But yeah, and then you got to remember, on every one of those throws, it's real important to keep the wrist down. You got to make sure every throw is with the wrist down. You know, don't let this wrist come up. You know, right now the disc is down, you know, and there's up. So if you're throwing the disc and it's riding high, you know, you're breaking your wrist. This got to stay straight. No matter, you know, what speed you throw the disc, you got to throw it with the nose down. You know, I played yesterday with, you know, a guy in the course, and every throw he threw, he was breaking the wrist and the disc was coming up. You know, and I knew exactly what he was doing wrong, and after the fourth time of him saying, "Why is my disc going up?" you know, I showed him. I'm like, "Look, you're throwing it with your wrist up." I said, "Get your wrist down." And all of a sudden he started throwing these really pretty S-turns with his disc. You know, so he went from throwing snow plows to just setting the disc out, and it was flying this great little S-turn. So he was pretty happy in the sense that now, I mean, he understood now, like, why is his disc flying up? So it's real important. Doesn't matter what your arm speed is, you need to have the wrist down for any disc to fly proper. I mean, you can't emphasize it enough. You know, the wrist has to stay down every single throw that you make. So anyway, so hopefully, you know, some of that in with everything else. You know, pay attention to the wind, pay attention to your wrist angle, disc selection when you're throwing. So anyways, for now, aloha. This is Michael out in Maui.